Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Born of the Gods here from Valencia, Spain. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Hall of Famer Randy Buehler and Zach Hill. We have Shaun McLaren from Canada. You take a look at Shaun there. He is playing red, white, blue control, a very traditional style control deck here for Modern, and he's up against Tim Rivera, who's playing a little bit of a twist on it, Randy. Same colors.
Yeah, it's same colors, but very different fundamental strategy. Tim Rivera is a combo deck at his heart. You know, he can play a control game, he's capable of looking like a blue-white control deck for quite a while. He's even got the ability, he's even got 4 Celestial Colonnades to potentially attack and win with. But if Shaun McLaren ever gives him a window, he can just combo kill out of nowhere. And
that is a scary thing if you're in Shaun McLaren's seat. So underway now. We do, though, have ultimately a control mirror here. So get comfortable if you're at home. This might be a good time to grab a refreshing beverage. And we're going to be seeing a lot of land drops. One of the big cards there for Shaun McLaren, he's got a Sphinx's Revelation in his hand already. Not relevant now, but could be later.
And it could be, yeah. I mean, the thing I reacted to when you were saying we were going to see a lot of land drops, because McLaren, despite being a control deck, playing Revelation, which despite the fact that it defines Standard, is way over the top on Modern. You know? I mean, it's an ultra late game card in a format that's fast. Only has 3 lands, meaning that Revelation may not get online anytime soon.
Now, one thing to keep in mind with Shaun McLaren's list as well is that it's moved most of its removal spells, basically everything but Path, into burn-type spells, Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix, that ultimately can go to his opponent's face, meaning his life total. He can actually just start throwing those. When you start adding Snapcaster Mage to the discussion, I've seen Shaun McLaren burn people out from 20 in a couple of attacks with Snapcaster Mages. It happens a lot more often than you'd think.
Oh yeah, I mean, Bolt, Snapcaster, Bolt, assuming 1 successful Snapcaster attack, which is not that hard to get. I mean, that's 8 damage.
Right.
And this is a format, I mean, you see Rivera at 17. Oh, wow.
Oh, here we go. Wow. So an aggressive play here from Tim Rivera. There is Deceiver Exarch.
Yeah, and I mean, Shaun missed his 4th land drop.
Yeah. How scary is this if you're in Shaun's seat? I mean,
pretty scary.
This could just be it, right? Sometimes these games just end like this. So Path to Exile being a huge card here, which he does have one in his hand.
Rivera has a Path. Does McLaren also have one?
McLaren also
has a Path, yes. But yeah, I mean, also just he's now getting clocked for 1, and we know McLaren missed a land drop. And his white source is tapped.
That's right.
That's what the Exarch did, was tap it. Right?
Yeah, now he's got a Scalding Tarn. He can find another white mana source. Tim Rivera knows that. Shaun McLaren knows that that Splinter Twin costs 4 mana, so it would force Tim Rivera to tap out if he wanted to make the ultra bold action of just going for it. And, of course, that's pretty reckless and not going to happen. So, like you mentioned, Zach, it's just a clock here.
No, yeah, it's a clock. I mean, he is able to set up a pretty neat play, which is Restoration Angel targeting the Exarch, which can again tap one of those mana sources. That's relevant largely because we see those Kiki Jikis in his hand, and unlike with Splinter Twin, a Path, if he paths Kiki Jiki, he's still taking 4 damage a turn. It's a lot of damage. He's not able to get that 2 for 1. Rivera gets an additional land. And he's got another Kiki Jiki. So, I mean, Path, it's not as though it totally brick walls what's going on Rivera's side of the board.
All right.
Lightning Bolt, again, another way to deal with Kiki Jiki, but that doesn't stop the damage either.
That's right. So here it is. Restoration Angel, you mentioned it a second ago, Zach. It's enter the battlefield, can target that Deceiver Exarch, get an additional enters the battlefield effect, untapping one of Tim Rivera's permanents or tapping one of Shaun McLaren's. It's up to Tim. But right now, I believe that Restoration Angel is still on the stack here.
It is.
Yeah, I think so. And we saw McLaren at his 4th land drop, which is incredibly important. Yeah, he's got to get a lot of lands on the table to cast that Revelation. Another option is just Revelationing for 1, trying to see more cards. But if McLaren had missed more than 1 land drop, I think Rivera would have been able to put it away.
All right, so Restoration Angel does resolve, does target Deceiver Exarch. Exarch is going to tap down the Celestial Colonnade of Shaun McLaren, and Shaun's still just passing the turn back. So Tim Rivera making some maneuvers, but one of the things to remember here is that he really does just put the onus back on Shaun, even without any combo talk, as he's just going to start hitting him for 4.
Yeah, well, he can go for Kiki Jiki here, and he's got 2 in his hand, so it makes sense to try to run a Kiki Jiki out there. If this resolves, he can instantly win the game with Restoration Angels. He tapped that white mana, so Path to Exile is not an option here.
Well, he's got a Scalding Tarn.
Oh, that's a Tarn. I thought it was a Steam Guns.
Yeah. So he's got a Scalding Tarn, so he can go grab a Hollowed Fountain with that. But it looks like we're going to see Lightning Bolt here.
I mean, which is still fine with Rivera. I mean, that just lets Rivera attack for 7 points of damage, even if Kiki-Jiki dies. It's like, okay.
And he's got to back up Kiki-Jiki in his hand. That's why he was so willing to just run it out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we going to see a path as well here?
Maybe. I mean, and with McLaren missing land drops, it's not the end of the world to see him thin his deck for even more lands.
Right.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, he might need it anyway just to avoid taking a zillion damage here.
So if he paths the Angel, the Kiki-Jiki tap is still on the stack, right?
Right, that's what's going on.
So pathing the Angel would fizzle that,
would
save
fizzle
6
the trigger.
damage.
Yeah.
It does use his path up, though, and leaves him vulnerable to a Splinter Twin.
Right.
Right, and as you mentioned, Rivera has one more Kiki-Jiki.
Yes.
So if Path happens, that means that the Lightning Bolt in his hand, not enough for the 4 toughness of the Deceiver Exarch, and that makes Kiki-Jiki live. Again, it can kill Kiki-Jiki, but you're right. If he draws Splinter Twin, that Twin could be the game.
Yeah, now remember, this is all on Tim Rivera's turn, though, here. So Shaun McLaren's not only going to get to untap, but he's going to get a draw step as well. And there's Path to Exile to take down Restoration Angel. This is going to reduce the amount of damage he takes this turn. And, of course, it just gets that annoying Restoration Angel off the battlefield, too. The thing, you know, the 4 toughness on Restoration Angel is a real problem for Shaun McLaren's deck, as he's got Lightning Bolts and Lightning Helixes, even a Johnny Vengeance, you know, which has sort of a built-in Lightning Helix type ability, too.
I mean, Rivera's combo kill is an advantage in this matchup, but just being the guy who has Restoration Angel is also a big advantage in the matchup.
Right.
The fact that that's a flash creature that's 3/4 toughness and attacks for 3, you know, it allows Rivera to just play the blue-white-red control game and attack for damage.
Now, we do see with Path to Exile in the Graveyard and Bolt, I mean, now McLaren has, you know, more removal than he's ever going to need to worry about. And I think if you're Rivera and you have your last Kiki, you're going to be a lot less willing to just kind of run it out there because there's so many convenient answers to it that allow McLaren to actually gain value.
Now you're talking about those being in the yard and referencing the possibility of Snapcaster
Mage, right? Because McLaren has 2 copies of Snapcaster Mage now. Yeah. And, you know, you don't want to give your opponent an opportunity to get a 2-for-1 and apply relevant pressure to the board.
Wow. All right, but Shaun McLaren's going to be aggressive here. He's like, look, let's get this thing out of here while you're tapped out.
Exactly.
He's going to flash back Path to Exile, which looks like it needs to also go on a Path to Exile. There we go. And that's going to take down Deceiver Exarch and just make sure that Tim Rivera can't, you know, play something and then protect it, something along those lines. It also leaves Shaun McLaren with Lightning Bolt mana up here as well. So if Tim Rivera decides to just, you know, play Kiki-Jiki and try to set something up, he has an answer there too.
And I like that play because you want to get a Snapcaster Mage on the board and because that Exarch is going to be relevant anyway. But
he's going for it right now.
Oh, my goodness.
Tim
Rivera top-decked Exarch, had the land to play it and play the Kiki-Jiki, and McLaren has the bolt to break the combo up. I think Rivera believed he had just won the game.
I think he did too. He went for it, he slammed, and it wasn't
that was
quite
a windmill
enough.
slam Exarch Kiki-Jiki.
It was. And there it is. The hasty Deceiver Exarch is going to untap the Sacred Foundry and get in for but a damage. So Shaun McLaren putting himself in a good spot, rips Vendilion Click off the top here too, which can get himself a peek at what's going on. He has a lot of options with that as well. A lot of people like to do it during the draw step. He can even main phase it here if he wants to make sure that it resolves. It looks like Tim Rivera's down to what,
Snapcaster
2 or 3?
into Exarch?
Yes, he did that too.
And Exarch's not going to block.
No.
And I think that's because of the lightning Helix. He basically is like, okay, I don't care that much about Snapcaster Mage.
Right.
Rivera going for it there, I mean, I definitely understand the impulse, but if your opponent has just been missing land drop after land drop, I think it's a reasonable assumption to assume they have some kind of action. On the other hand, I mean, you do need a window. You don't have forever, and your opponent is the control deck with the theoretical better late game.
Right, so I think he is going to main phase his Vendilion Click. He does that here, and he's going to target his opponent who has Path to Exile, and what's his other card, a Snapcaster? No, he's going to use the path here, though, so he's going to have the option to take away whatever that last card was, and it is a Snapcaster Mage. Generally speaking, you would take that.
Yeah, I think so.
Taking the Snapcaster?
Yeah, I mean, you can take nothing, which
the general
people don't
play.
do as often as they should, but I think Snapcaster's pretty good here with all the lands that Rivera has accumulated.
Right.
So you send it to the bottom and get him a draw.
Now, looking at his yard, though, I guess there is just the path. Is that right? It's that he can flash back with Snapcaster Mage?
That's a good point.
It's like land, Kiki path. Normally you would
maybe you
take
don't
it,
take
but
Snapcaster.
Yeah. That's interesting. He's going to let him keep it. That is the exception, though. I think generally speaking, you do. Ooh, remand off the top for Tim Rivera.
And this is the situation where letting your opponent keep Snapcaster is so dangerous because they draw anything. It's just unbelievable. And again, like exactly as you said, with all those lands, you know, Snapcaster pretty easy to leverage.
Yeah, Shaun McLaren must be worried about getting comboed off again or something, because normally you just don't want your opponent to have Snapcasters
And that does
matchup.
make sense, because if he draws another Kiki or a Splinter Twin there,
Game over.
Yeah, the game's just ends.
So he just couldn't take the risk of letting Tim Rivera have a draw step there.
I mean, it's kind of unbelievable how resilient Rivera's deck is, that his combo's been disrupted twice, and he still has like a source of card advantage, a counter spell, and is threatening lethal at any given time.
Yeah.
McLaren's, been very, very mana light. His hand, certainly no slouch, has another Snapcaster Mage, a Revelation if he draws another land.
Yeah, so he's got a Snapcaster and he draws another Path to Exile. Remember, he's already pathed 2 things. One of them naturally, one of them off of the Snapcaster Mage. So that Path to Exile, really a super useful tool in this matchup, as, again, Deceiver Exarch sitting there kind of laughing at the Lightning Helix in Shaun McLaren's hands. And, all right, here's a Snapcaster Mage. So what is he? He's going to Path here?
No, I think
He's just going to block?
I think he might block. No, he's going to Path. Okay. He's giving McLaren a land here isn't
That's
awesome.
interesting.
Rivera's down to 10, though, so...
It does get sketchy. If Tim Rivera takes it there and goes to 8, normally in a control matchup, you'd think, well, he's fine. Like, he's at 8. It's going to be a while. His opponent doesn't really have much of a board here. But in this matchup, that's not the case. I mean, right now, Shaun McLaren has basically 6 burn in his hand currently.
Well, yeah, he has 6 burn, and the thing is, Rivera has Remand. The last thing he wants is to set Shaun McLaren up to top deck a land and just activate Colonnade and kill him.
Yeah. There's a Lightning Helix off the top for Tim Rivera as well. And he's going to go on the offensive, attack with both of his creatures for 3 damage, potentially bringing Shaun McLaren back down to 10. Again, Shaun McLaren has a little less to worry about in that way because Tim Rivera doesn't want quite as much burn, but still, it's a clock. It's the only 2 creatures on the board, so those are going to whittle away at Shaun McLaren's life total as the game goes longer. He can't just sit there and take it forever.
Right, and having that pressure just makes Remand so much better. Because, the tempo is just a lot more meaningful than it would be otherwise. And again, now that he's pressuring McLaren, it makes the play of just activate my Colonnade all the time a lot more risky.
That's right.
McLaren.
Shaun McLaren considering using Lightning Helix here on that Snapcaster Mage. He's going to do it.
I think that's right. I think he has to. He can't afford to just get attacked for 3. Like, eventually he's going to have to respond because he's not going to win a race.
Right. If you snapshot this board state, it is not in Shaun McLaren's favor going long, and it's not going to change anytime soon unless he does something about it. So Lightning Helix is going to bump him back up to 13. He's going to take 1 from Deceiver Exarch, but now the pressure's relieved. I mean, just the 1 Deceiver Exarch is not an issue for Shaun McLaren, at least as far as his life total goes.
It's a lot more turns than...
Yeah.
Right. All right, so Shaun draws yet another land. He's managed to creep back up there on lands. I think he's caught up to parity again. And I believe, is that 2 Lightning Helix now?
Yeah.
For Tim Rivera in his hand?
It is, which represents the possibility of a lot of damage. The question is just when you can cast them, what you cast them on. I mean, both players have really active hands. The game not really going to be over immediately anytime soon unless Rivera is able to top deck a combo piece.
Yeah, the other thing that's sort of looming over this game is the fact that Shaun McLaren is still holding that Sphinx's Revelation from his opening hand. That can just blow out this game, going for an end step and actually having it resolved. Now, Tim Rivera still has Remand, and here he goes right now. Interestingly, he played his Sacred Foundry tap there, so it would be for 1 less. He might have anticipated a Remand here. And Remand finds kind of an awkward wall of omens there.
It's sort of awkward. On the other hand, I think it's pretty solid. I mean, it draws him a card, gets him to more lands, and it means
future Restoration Angels or cantrips.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's fine going down the line. It's just not another Remand off the top here for Tim Rivera, though. Means Shaun did have an opening to resolve his Sphinx's Revelation, but it would have left him wide open to just dying, so he couldn't do that. Here comes Wall of Omens.
The other thing Wall does is that Deceiver Exarch has a huge target on its head.
Ooh.
But what that means...
That was a key draw step there, Zach.
It was. And, that wants to target Deceiver to just win the game. But if something happens to that Deceiver, you can just put Splinter Twin on Wall of Omens, and now you're drawing 2 cards a turn.
All right, so again, Shaun McLaren goes for the big Sphinx's Revelation, and again, he has it remanded. He finds a Lightning Bolt on the top of his deck. That Lightning Bolt is interesting. No, he still just has the path there that he can use to take out the Deceiver Exarch if needed.
Yeah, Rivera has stopped that Sphinx's Revelation twice. He's got to be tempted to just play a Splinter Twin here. I mean, Is he going to wait for another counter? He used the remand on the Sphinx's Revelation. Like, Sphinx's Revelation is going to go dig up counters for Shaun McLaren. So it's not going to get easier for Tim Rivera.
This is the window, right?
This is the window before Sphinx's Revelation draws into more counters. I'd certainly be tempted if I was Tim Rivera.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to go for it, and that is going to get met with likely a path to exile here. Path Deceiver Exarch.
Yeah, and I actually, I may have even Splinter Twin the wall. I mean, I think it might just be getting way too adorable. But you, again,
your options are win the game or put Jayme Tome into play. I think win the game is...
Well, I mean, sort of, except that your opponent missed 1,000,000 land drops.
But your opponent's about to resolve Sphinx's Revelation. Your odds of winning the game don't go up as this game progresses. Even if you were making extra, even if you're drawing an extra card every turn,
I mean, it's
4 or 5 turns before you caught up to the rev.
It's only a revelation for 4. I mean, it's amazingly good.
Yep. Yeah, and he is going to fire it off for 3 here, Zach. Yeah. He had to use that 1 mana for the path, so it does get a little bit minimized here, but still, drawing 3 on end step going to be pretty powerful here for Shaun McLaren. He gets his normal draw step. It's another lightning bolt. Having those 2 burn spells in hand certainly matters as well, where he can fire them both at a 4 toughness creature. And Shaun looks to be in pretty good position here, as Tim Rivera just doesn't have a whole lot going on anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. I mean, going for it just means like, okay, you have to show it to me now. Maybe you probably have it, but... I
mean, it's not like Splinter Twin is more likely to resolve because you pointed it at Wallavoe, unless your opponent thinks, well, that's not it. I don't care about that. Like, the only way it resolves is if it's not good.
Yeah, or you or your opponent have a different valuation of the card, whereas, like, your valuation of getting hit for lethal is going to probably be the same thing. But I agree, probably too fancy. And ultimately, it doesn't make that much of a difference. You're attacking for 1 a turn. You have the possibility of another combo kill. But that Revelation resolving, obviously very bad for Rivera.
Speaking of Revelation, let's do it again. Shaun McLaren does the good old Snapcaster Mage on my Sphinx's Revelation here, and that will draw him 3 more and gain him 3 more life, really putting him so far ahead in the card economy game here that he needs to start turning the tide on Tim Rivera. And, we talked about it earlier. Tim's at 10 life, which feels pretty nice cushy 10 life total, and he is in absolute burn range. Like right now, I think Tim has enough burn in his hand just to kill him.
McLaren absolutely does. He's got 2 electrolyzes, 2 bolts. That's 10.
He's just not going to tap out to do it. He'll wait for end step.
That's
start firing them off.
So Shaun McLaren seems to have maneuvered himself in a pretty nice spot. Now, one thing that we do know, though, is that Tim Rivera's got, I believe, 2 Lightning Helix in hand, so that can throw off that math pretty nicely, too. So this one might not be over quite yet, but it's getting there.
Is that foil that was exiled, a path to exile that got snapcastered earlier? Yeah, I think it is. I'm just looking at the exiled pile versus the graveyard. Kind of unbelievable how much work Snapcaster Mage can do in this format.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially now that it's been cleared away from its arch nemesis, Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, and
Shaun McLaren at 19 life, thanks to those Sphinx's Revelations, means that the Celestial Colonnade plan from Tim Rivera is just not really an option at this point. End of turn, cast Electrolyze, target you.
Yeah, this game is basically over.
I mean,
it does feel like that.
Rivera has a pair of Lightning Helix, so he can gain up to 6 life. But you're not losing a lot by throwing the Electrolyzes at Rivera. You're getting your card back. If you blew 2 bolts and he was able to Helix back and stay at 3, that could theoretically be relevant. But you could just activate.
But I mean, he's buying himself draw phases. That both players top decking at this point favors McLaren, not Rivera.
Yeah, and it favors McLaren by a lot.
By a lot. Especially since I think he drew the 2nd copy of Sphinx's Revelation from his list, right?
Man. Yeah, it looks like it.
I did not see it, but I don't see it in his hand.
Also, McLaren has a tech edge, so more lands. It's not as though activating Colonnade is something he even has to be remotely worried about, whereas McLaren's Colonnade can just kill
All right,
Rivera.
so this is an interesting play here. Tim Rivera went for a Lightning Helix on the Snapcaster Mage to try to recoup the life, and Shaun McLaren said, no, I'm just going to counter it with my Path to Exile, not search for anything, bolt you. Lightning Helix, target you, and Shaun McLaren has Cryptic Command, Mana Leak, let's see.
Yeah,
he's got a Snapcaster Mage, so he can just do another bolt. He just needs to make sure that he doesn't miss tap here, but he has the tools to get the job done. Yeah, he did, because he's got Cryptic Command plus Snapcaster Lightning Bolt here, so he can do it either way.
He still didn't need to fire the bolts off main phase. Like, he got himself in this awkward situation where he doesn't really want to use his Cryptic and tap out main phase. He could have given Rivera another draw phase, but he didn't want to do that. I'm not sure which was better here.
He could have at least waited till Rivera's upkeep, maybe.
Right.
So that Rivera would have to tap.
Yeah, I think this would have been much better on Rivera's upkeep rather than McLaren's.
He's still going to get away with it here, I think.
Is.
Yep, Snapcaster Mage, Lightning Bolt with that on the stack, and that's going to do it. Shaun McLaren finds his way to victory by burning out his opponent. You're going to see that over and over. This is, you know, I heard somebody refer to this type of deck as a glorified burn deck, which kind of caught me off guard. But the way that it ends the game actually does play out that way quite often. So, yeah. Welcome back to the booth, guys. Marshall Sutcliffe here with Zach Hill and Randy Buehler. And, that was some good stuff. I like this matchup quite a bit. There's a lot of tension thanks to the Splinter Twin
We're not doing a very good job of predicting, though. We said that, you know, the blue-white deck that can combo kill and can play Restoration Angel, it's a better blue-white-red control deck, and it has a combo kill. No problem.
Yeah.
And it's gone the way of the Storm deck, loses the game one, it was supposed to win.
I mean, it is true. I mean, it was stalled on lands, but drew enough lands to actually accomplish something.
Yeah, it drew the paths was the key, right? It had the ability to bust up the combo multiple times.
I think he drew 4 paths that game.
Well, he drew
by the end of it,
maybe
like
by
3 to 4 of them, and all the Snapcasters too. Yeah,
right. The Snapcasters were put it over the edge, and being able to bolt Kiki Jiki were also incredible. So, you know, he had enough lands to be able to leverage his hand and eventually cast a Revelation that's big enough to win the game. You know, standard Sphinx's Revelation, sometimes you Revelation for 4, and it's just not that awesome. In a format like Modern, with that high a power level, being up 3-4 cards is just totally
I mean, the problem is just that it's slow, right? There's really this spectrum in the blue-white-red control decks, anywhere from super aggressive, right? I mean, you can kind of look at the genealogy starting with the Delver decks, right? You can have the super aggro Delver deck. You can play white for Path to Exile and be sort of this mid-range tempo deck. You see Geist of St. Traft won the most recent Modern Grand Prix. Blue, white, red, but with Geist. You can play Blade Splicer. You can play Restoration Angel. Those are the ones that want to attack more aggressively.
Right.
But you can also take it control-ish. And that's what Shahar Shenhar used to win the World Championships, was to say, no, really, I'm a Sphinx's Revelation deck. I can only afford to run, 2, maybe 3 of them. I believe we have 2 here.
Right.
2.
But you know what? That's a fine strategy. It's just like in different matchups, how aggressive do you want to be? How controllish do you want to be?
Now, we saw that there was 2 really key cards here in the game one. We saw Path to Exile was absolutely critical to winning it because of the 4 toughness creatures on the other side of the battlefield, and Sphinx's Revelation was the one that kind of buried it. Why don't we take a look at the sideboard plan, though, as we move forward, of Shaun McLaren here, and let's take a look at what he is going to be doing, Zach.
Yeah, so, I mean, kind of a really crazy board for McLaren.
Lots of 2s and 1s up there.
Right, yeah. Porphyry Nodes, Stony Silence, Relic of Progenitus, and a bunch of 1-ofs. I think what you definitely want Counterflux. Stops anything that your opponent's doing dead, no counter wars, no worrying about any of that.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure about Logic Knot. It's a decent counterspell. Your opponent's not going to be hating on your graveyard, but it makes your Snapcaster mages worse. I like having counterspells because your opponent's fighting at instant speed so much.
Does it get worse in these really long matchups where players have a ton of lands on the battlefield, or can you make that? I mean, I know you might have to wipe out your whole graveyard. Is that worth it to be able to do it? Like, I've never actually played Logic Knot in Constructed. I've only played it in Modern Masters.
Who's it for if you're not bringing it in here?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, maybe for like a pure control mirror, but I agree. I think it's pretty good here.
Okay.
A card like Wear Tear is interesting because it's obviously extremely good against Splinter Twin, but unlike a lot of the other
it's not
Twin
obvious.
decks,
Why don't you say why?
So I mean, you just cast Tear on Splinter Twin that's
on the
targeting
first activation.
Exactly. So you get to untap your Deceiver that was formerly enchanted with Twin, but then it doesn't have Twin on it again. So congratulations, you have 2 1/4.
So that effectively does break up the non-Kiki Jiki side of the combo.
Exactly. The challenge there is if you have all these reactive cards, but your answer isn't right for the correct threat, like if your opponent has Kiki Jiki when you have Wear Tear, it doesn't accomplish anything. It also it doesn't advance you strategically.
Now, one of the cards that we're going to ask Randy about the other sideboard, but I would expect to see out of the board is like a Spell Skite.
Side,
we'll take a look at that. I'm just wondering if Wear is good for that.
Here, though?
I actually really like Crucible.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible. The reason the cards in the
seems
deck,
good.
some decks, play Crucible of Worlds to go crazy with an effect, wasteland your opponent over and so on and so forth. I think its principal use here is to get back sack lands and just not miss land drops. But the deck has 4 copies of Tectonic Edge, so it can also really constrain the Twin Decks mana as well. I think you do bring it in here.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, being able to more fetch lands so you don't miss land drops, Tech Edge, he can get a real mana advantage. I think after sideboarding, this does become even more control versus control, which is a matchup historically that's always been about land drops. So Crucible seems like a really interesting threat.
Now, is it Staticaster I see up there? That's a card that can disrupt combos of this type if they use Pestermite as the thing. This one doesn't, right?
Well, I mean, it has 2 Pestermites,
So
and it has 4 Exarchs.
Okay.
I don't think you bring Staticaster in here. I mean, it can also blow out like Goblin Warrens. It can kill all the tokens from that.
Doesn't interact with Restoration Angel profitably there
I mean, it lets you bolt it, but...
Oh, that's true. That is true.
Not
that
sure
could,
that's
could
good
be
enough to bring
interesting.
in.
We see timely reinforcements, that kind of thing.
I mean, do you think bolts even stay in the deck?
I was just thinking about that. I think Electrolyze is probably your worst burn spell. It only kills Kiki-Jiki, and it costs 3 to do that, which is kind of hard to remain open.
It does cycle, but yeah.
It cycles. It's hard to say. I think Bolt is like kind of bad, but it's good because they play so many Kiki-Jikis, and it lets you save your path for the 4 toughness creatures. Another card you could bring in is Celestial Purge, which gets both Splinter Twin and Kiki-Jiki. So that's obviously great.
Okay.
Again, there's the issue, though, of it only fights the combo piece and doesn't fight the non-combo element of the deck. And I would be worried that if you do too much of that, your deck kind of starts to
You sort
fall
of
apart.
over sideboard?
You just died a Restoration
And you
Angel.
just died a Restoration Angel. My gut is that you probably bring it in because it's only 1 card, and you have a lot of cards. Again,
Your bolts and your helixes don't seem great in this matchup. It seems like all these sideboard cards we're talked about are just better than those.
All right, why don't we take a look
agree.
at the other side of the coin here, Randy? We've got Tim Rivera's sideboard here.
Yep.
And same color trio for these decks.
Right.
What's different over there?
Well, there's not much that's the same, honestly. The best card I see over here is Dispel.
Okay.
It's 1 mana. It counters a counter. It counters a path to exile. Like, I definitely think that Dispel is the 3 copies of Dispel are absolutely coming in. We also have 2 copies of Spellskite.
Yeah, we need to move it.
2 Spellskites want to come in. 3 Dispels want to come in. After
3 Dispel.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. No, he's ready. He knew he was going to have to run into this matchup. Like Blue, White, Red Control was one of the top 5 decks on everybody's gauntlet. So that's a deck that he knew he was going to need to be good against. Dispel is exactly the kind of card you want in a matchup like this. And the Spellskites also, the fact that they can eat the bolts. I mean, we saw game 1 was all about killing the Kiki-Jikis. So being able to have the Spellskite say, no, I'm going to take one for the team. You're pathing me. Those 5 cards are absolutely coming in, no question about it.
This might be going kind of deep, but I actually don't hate Sowing Salt here.
Oh, interesting.
Because, a lot of the time, we didn't see it last game, but they'll just try to kill you with Colonnade.
And you can just take that off the table completely.
4 Bolt, 3 Helix seem pretty bad in this matchup. That's 7, Dispel and 2 Spellskites is only 5. He's got to bring in a couple more cards, I think.
All right, so we'll see what he does. The players are ready to go right down into the feature match here again for Game 2 of Tim Rivera versus Shaun McLaren. All right, back down in the feature match area. It's a little bit lonelier down there, as you can see. We had 4 tables. They are down to 1. And a Celestial Colonnade to start things off for Tim Rivera. Hollowed Fountain for Shaun McLaren. Things usually don't go too quickly at the beginning of a matchup like this. There's not a lot of super relevant early drops. Even things like, Wall of Omens are just sort of cycling and moving through the deck here. One thing to keep an eye on, of course, during these first stages, there's Wear Tear, by the way, for Shaun McLaren, so he did bring that in. Rashad reminded me a second ago that also works really well against Spellskite, not only destroying it, but since it has 2 targets, it doesn't actually allow it to redirect to Spellskite, which is cool. There's Stony Silence now for Tim Rivera. Is that against Spellskite? What else does that hit? Remember, the players know each other's sideboard, so he's got a specific reason to bring in Stony Silence here.
Yeah, activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. It is for Spellskite.
It is for Spellskite. All right, and there's Wall of Omens for Tim Rivera. Draw a card, ship the turn back. Again, he has nothing to fear from Shaun McLaren's side. There's nothing, there's no big blowout that Shaun can do. Of course, Shaun
McLaren
in reverse has to worry all the time.
Yeah, McLaren has basically the slowest version of the Blue, White, Red control deck that you can build.
Yep.
Wow, I did not see
Stony
2
Silence
copies of Stony Silence coming in for 2 copies of Spellskite. But I mean, Spellskite is incredible in this matchup.
Might only be one Stony Silence. We don't know if he brought them both.
That's true. He has access to 2, but we have no idea how many he brought.
He brought the Wear and Tear in, so he's got that option too. He must be really worried about it, though.
Spellskite's great. Spellskite's absolutely spectacular in this matchup.
And Wear and Tear is versatile enough, plus you can Snapcaster it, that I think it's absolutely correct, or it makes perfect sense to bring in one of those. Stony Silence is way more of a deliberate commitment to Spellskite.
Yeah, well, here's Restoration Angel.
The value train starts rolling. Like you mentioned it earlier, Randy.
Yeah.
The thing just starts beating you down, and it's like, well, now I've got to deal with that.
Yeah, it's instant speed, so he's summoning it during McLaren's end step. It's 3/4, so it hits kind of hard, and it blinks a creature like Wall of Omen, so it can draw a card.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Restoration speed, 3-power draw a card. It's so powerful in this matchup.
It's unbelievable in this matchup. And, I mean, this is the risk of bringing in a bunch of really narrow cards like Stony Silence, is that your plan against, you know, just the Splinter Twin Deck's plan B is just not all that effective.
All right, now McLaren's going to tap out here for Cryptic Command to get a draw step going because he knows that Tim Rivera can't combo off this turn, though. Does Tim have a Kiki-Jiki in his hand as well?
Yeah, maybe you summon that now, draw a card. You can make a copy of Wall of Omens every turn to draw cards.
Yeah, I really like that. It sets up your Deceiver Exarch well, and like even, you know, he Cryptic Commanded your Angel, so he got card advantage there. But now if he is able to path Kiki-Jiki, you get a land off the path and a card off the Wall of Omens, unless he's pathing the Wall of Omens too, but that seems pretty gritty.
All right, so there's a pair of Path to Exiles to go along with Wear and Tear and Mana Leak in the hand for Shaun McLaren.
Yeah,
really
Rivera
wishes he just had a bolt here, right? just take down Kiki-Jiki and end that, but that's not actually going to happen here. Does he have to main phase Path here, let his opponent get the extra mana, and just guarantee that Kiki-Jiki doesn't survive?
Yes.
I think so, yeah. You can't.
Also, he gets another card off of it, too.
It.
If he untaps with it, he also gets another card from Wall, so he just has to do it here. Ugh. This does not feel good if you're Shaun McLaren, though. I'm sure he's relieved that he has the Path in his hand and can take out Kiki-Jiki here.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, you know, and now you also get a Plains, you can activate Colonnade, you know, you actually put some real pressure on your opponent.
Yeah, the Colonnade may get some work done here.
And having extra mana means that if he's able to activate Colonnade,
to get white mana?
He did not get a Plains.
He's got 2 Arid Maces in his hand.
All right.
So if he gets that, attacks with Colonnade, he still has 2 mana up for the Remand in his hand. Because of the Vigilance on the Colonnade.
McLaren still has a land drop to hit here.
Yeah, I mean, the mana advantage.
Tech Edge.
He's going to Tech Edge the Colonnade. Okay, so bring him back down the land that he just gave him.
More importantly, he stops the Colonnade from attacking him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Though, interestingly, you know, there's always a decision between do it now or wait, because if they sink their entire turn into activating their Colonnade and you Tech Edge it, then you're pretty happy with that result, too. So he decided to do it main phase, though. Tim Rivera just plays his land and passes the turn back. A second Mana Leak for Shaun McLaren. Those are getting worse and worse as the game goes.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the reasons he Tech Edged on his turn was that Tim didn't get a second white source.
Yep.
So wanted to deprive him of access of white.
Okay.
You know, having the Arid Mesa means it's kind of a moot point.
Also makes his Mana Leaks better if Rivera did not spend his turn on activating Colonnade.
That's right, and Shaun McLaren did have mana up for Mana Leak after he had shipped the turn back. So.
Sure. Tap the Steam Vents.
So getting rid of McLaren's red source there by tapping it
vents,
starts to get some form of a clock on the table.
The smallest form.
But I mean, from McLaren's point of view, he's got to be worried about a Splinter Twin coming down.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely he does.
Or a Kiki-Jiki.
Because Splinter Twin, if this Arid Mesa, you know, successfully gets a source, we're assuming he has free sources in his deck. He does. And he plays another land. He's actually able to pay for a Mana Leak through.
Right, but that's why Shaun McLaren has stopped him here. He wants to make sure he has the smallest amount of mana available so that he can Mana Leak whatever. I guess he could Mana Leak anything anyway, but it's just tight play, right, to make sure, like, get him when he's doesn't have access to like Dispel plus
Well,
something.
part of what's going on is that it's really tempting against the Splinter Twin deck to wait and like 2-for-1 them by packing its response to the Splinter Twin, but it's also extremely scary.
Yes.
Because they know that you can do this, so they're probably not going for it unless they're ready to defend it. I mean, McLaren's strategy here, and I think this is just correct, is just kill the first half of the combo even before you see the second one.
And make those things dead.
Yeah, the threat of the combo is so powerful that you want to just kill every combo piece you see as soon as you can.
And you might as well do it before you've taken enough incidental damage that you have to actually start worrying about Lightning Helix and Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, I like McLaren's playing this well.
There's a Dispel off the top for Tim Rivera.
Dispel seems unbelievable in this
and
matchup.
he's got 3. That's insane.
And
I mean, is it enough for Shaun McLaren just to take Sphinx's Revelation out of his deck if he sees that his opponent has 3 Dispels?
I don't think so. I
mean, still going to run it?
I think there's enough other loose cards. Like I think a Johnny Vengeance isn't that exciting here. You know, but I mean, it makes sense. But yeah, I don't think. It's
what you're playing with the Revelation is you're going to trade cards. You know, you have some fights over everything. You know, you both play a bunch of spells, nothing gets accomplished. Now your opponent's out of stuff, and you refill with Rev. So it's still good there. Your opponent probably used it to Dispel on the previous fight.
Right, and that's exactly right. I mean, Dispel has so many targets that it's not as though you can afford, I think, to sit in your hand and wait for Revelation.
Exactly.
All right, Spell Snare off the top for Shaun McLaren.
Good.
Now he's got a lot of redundancy against that Spell Skite that he fears after having brought in the Stony Silence.
It's interesting to me that Rivera leaves in 2 Lightning Helix in a matchup where the life gain doesn't matter all that much. I mean, it matters once you're getting burnt out, but that usually is because of something else. And at 2 mana, unlike actual Lightning Bolt, it can get hit by a Spell Snare. I guess McLaren only has 1 Spell Snare.
His creature removal, his main deck is 4 Path, 4 Bolt, 3 Helix.
Right.
That's 11 cards. He doesn't have 11 cards to bring in. So it's really a question of, like, is Lightning Helix better or is Path to Exile better?
Yeah, that's a good point. At least Helix can go to the
Helix can go to the head. You're planning to win a lot of games with attacking with Restoration Angel. So I think Helix is better than Path. I mean, they are the worst cards left in your deck probably.
And it does mean that if he does leave in a Johnny or if a Johnny is a problem, you at least have Burn that can go to the Planeswalker.
True. Yeah, that's another reason why it's better than Path.
Path takes care of Celestial Colonnade.
Right. That's why Path's not relevant. Yeah. I mean, there is a thing for Path to do, but there's fewer things.
Makes sense.
All right, there's another Wall of Omens for Tim Rivera. Keeping the momentum going here, though we're at that middle stage of the game where it's pretty unclear exactly where things are going to go. Neither player's really enacting a plan here. Nobody's doing much attacking. There's nothing to attack with.
I mean, it feels like McLaren's up a couple of cards, right? He got to Kichi Wall. He got pathed. So, I mean, he's up some cards, but he hasn't really been able to stitch a hand together that can do a whole lot.
Now, this Restoration Angel here, really, really good.
For Tim Rivera.
For Tim Rivera. I think, it's at least going to bait 2 mana. It's going to either bait 2 mana leaks.
It is not a mistake that there's 3 untapped lands. He's going for Angel with 3 available.
That's right.
Now, it looks like McLaren did top deck a Cryptic Command, which means that with 3 up, even if Tim tries to fight a counter war over it, he runs into Mana Leak, and McLaren has the perfect amount of mana to cast 2 Mana Leaks through Dispel and Remand.
So counter draw here from Cryptic Command, leaving up double Mana Leak, and also there's a Spell Snare in there, which he could get use out of it right here.
Remand the Angel.
Remand
so he's
the
hoping
Angel.
to fizzle the Cryptic Command.
And Shaun McLaren's going to counter this. The question is, does he want to use a Leak or does he want to get that Spell Snare out of his hand?
I like using Leak here.
Yeah, I do too. With that much land in play.
Exactly. Whereas Spell Snare is going to be a hard counter for as long as you need it to be. So
all right, so Mana Leak successfully countered Remand, and now Dispel is going to try to counter Cryptic Command.
Yeah, we got a good old-fashioned fight here, and there's a second Mana Leak.
And this is a huge moment in this match. Because that means that those Mana Leaks, which are basically dead, were able to be live. Rivera has no Dispel or Remand, so if McLaren draws a Sphinx's Revelation, this game could be good. A huge Cryptic
We could also
Command
just sit here for
McLaren.
10 more turns.
Yeah, well, yeah, right.
I mean, on the one hand, what I see happening there is Rivera went for a play that had potential to just win the game in a couple of turns by attacking with Angel, and McLaren fended it off.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't mean McLaren's winning. It means McLaren avoided losing.
Well, he got a 2-for-1, which was big, with Cryptic Command plus draw.
Right, so he spent leak, Cryptic Command to deal with Angel, Dispel, Remand, but he got to draw a card.
Exactly.
So it's kind of, yeah, he 4 for 3. He is up a card there.
Which is not
because
the
Cryptic
greatest
Command
in the world.
There's a Restoration Angel off the top of the deck there for Tim
Right,
Rivera.
yeah, Rivera
so
has more things to draw.
Let's do it again.
Exactly. I mean, McLaren's got those Sphinx's Revelations, which would be amazing, but there's only 2 of them, and Rivera has a whole bunch of things that he can do that are useful. He's got the 4 Angels. He's got the combo parts.
Yeah, right. I mean, even just drawing a Splinter Twin or a Kiji is unbelievable.
Even drawing a
here.
Colonnade would be good for Rivera. Although now there's another Tech Edge.
Right. Yeah, another Tech Edge means that Colonnade not as good.
Is McLaren thinking about Colonnade?
Might be.
It does look like it.
Is he thinking he wants to attack? Or does he have a spell to cast?
Well, I mean, with only Wear, Tear, and Spell Snare in your hand...
He's a little vulnerable?
Yeah, exactly. You've got to start making something happen. I mean, yeah, it is a hard decision against a deck that can kill you out of nowhere that has 5 cards in its hand to tap 4 mana on your main phase, or 5
it's kind of it's almost like a tell. I mean, McLaren does have, I guess he's still got 4 mana available, so this is reasonable time to start attacking with Colonnade, even if you have, Cryptic Command, Mana Leak. He's representing Cryptic Command. Even after this attack.
But this is exactly the situation that we were saying, like why we thought Rivera had something of an edge. Like, they just fought a war.
For sure.
Over, like, a card that mattered, but wasn't...
Rivera's got more where that one came from.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, he's got one in his hand right now. He might.
And a Snapcaster Mage that can do things.
Yeah. He's going to take the damage here, though, from the Celestial Colonnade.
Yeah.
And then he's probably going to go for Angel again.
Yep.
There it is, Restoration Angel.
Can I have this one?
You can.
Yeah, this one looks like it's going to resolve.
That one's going to resolve. There's
Blink.
Wall of Omens. Get that card back. Wow. And Splinter Twin off the top.
And he's got an X-Arc. So, I mean, is he done with the end step? He could end step X-Arc here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gonna.
There it is. He's going for it again. Does not have Mana Leak protection here, but doesn't need it.
He plowed through 2 of them last turn. It's unlikely that there's
2 Cryptics and 2 Mana Leaks. So you have to think that your opponent's capacity to do that is relatively limited. I mean, theoretically, there's Snapcaster Mana Leak.
Yeah, he's got Snapcaster.
He has double Splinter Twin now as well, because remember, Shaun McLaren has Wear and Tear in his hand.
Time to go for the kill.
Yep.
Splinter Twin?
Splinter Twin. Now, when he activates it, it gets Wear and Tear, but does he still get the effect, meaning that it'll be untapped again, and he can play a second Splinter Twin and then go off here?
That's exactly right.
All right.
Want to make sure. Did he? Yeah, 2 mana.
Tear that.
Tim, I think, has to think about how exactly this works.
He has. Do you have a permission spell he can Snapcaster back?
I think there's a Remand in the yard somewhere.
Sounds right. Remand's not good enough, though.
It can get
All right, so there it is. He gets to untap his Deceiver X-Arc. He's got just enough mana to go for it again.
Yep.
This one resolves, makes a copy, and combos off. So Tim Rivera equalizes here. We're going to get a game 3 in the match of Red, White, Blue versus Red, White, Blue, sort of.
Some pretty unbelievable draw steps in a row there for Rivera, but he had a lot that he could draw.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how unbelievable those draw steps were. It's kind of, that's how the deck is supposed to work.
Sure. Yeah, especially after sideboard when you don't have a bunch of blank cards.
Take all the creature removal out of the deck. You've just got more things that are relevant.
And that was kind of how we drew it up as well, right? Like, he had a huge fight over a Restoration Angel. And then another Restoration Angel resolved, and then it was 2 Splinter Twins, and Shaun McLaren found himself out of answers. I mean, he had 1 left, but to be fair.
It's one of those where, I mean, McLaren's really kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right?
Yeah.
If he doesn't fight over Restoration Angel, he's just going to die to the 3-power flyer attacking him. If he does fight over it, he's vulnerable to the combo.
That's right.
And that's really where the power of the the White Twin, that's the power of the White Twin deck list.
Yeah, and I think we've got a graphic actually to bring up about exactly that right here. Splinter Twin. Enchantment Rare. Zach, talk to us about Splinter Twin from Rise of the Eldrazi.
Well, Splinter Twin has been a card that's been winning games of Modern for a long time now. I mean, like we point out, it was in Estradi's winning Modern deck from basically the dawn of the format. The idea is that you put it on a creature that can untap itself, or in Restoration Angel's case, it flickers the card that can untap itself. It's a weird, I guess Restoration Angel works Kiki Jiki. But with Splinter Twin, you put it on either a Pestermite or a Deceiver Exarch, tap it, make a copy, target the one that has Splinter Twin on it, untap it, and you just keep doing that. You make any number of 1/4s or 2/1s, you attack with all of them, your opponent dies. What's awesome about it in this blue-white-red deck is that it can also just go on a Snapcaster Mage or a Wall of Omens and just generate a ton of value that way. Now that, most of the time, is not going to be as good as
Does that actually happen?
That does happen.
I mean, I understand it's cute, but...
That does happen.
I mean, I think in that matchup, like, even without Deceiver Exarch, if he top decked, I mean, it would have been really good there.
It would have been good there, yeah. Without the Exarch, he could have put it on a Wall of Omens, and it would have been
people have done that against me
win.
for sure. Yeah. They just grind, and you're like, okay, this is going to get out of hand. Because it only takes a couple of activations before they just find another one anyway or find the other combo pieces when you're drawing cards like that.
Against a deck that attacks you, you also get an unlimited number of blockers. So it's kind of like a virtual removal spell, too.
Sure.
But that said, you probably should just be killing your opponent with it most of the time.
It's not plan A. It's not plan A, but it's on the radar for sure. So yeah, Splinter Twin, an interesting card. We've had it for a few years now, and it certainly does a lot of work here in Modern.
Yeah, three different decks in this top 8 are playing Splinter Twin. I mean, we could see it winning an additional Modern Pro Tour.
I mean, it's in a long heritage of 3 mana into 4 mana combos that go into different decks and win. That's been happening with the Donate Illusions of Grandeur combo for something like a decade now at least. So, I mean, just 2-card combos that win the game that aren't hard to assemble, especially when both pieces actually accomplish something independent of each other. Really good.
Now, this is the other side of the combo. Let's just take a quick look at it again. Uncommon from New Phyrexia there. Zach, this seems to be sort of the de facto target for Splinter Twins these days. I'm assuming 4 toughness is the main reason for that?
Yeah, exactly. The 4 toughness means that it survives Lightning Bolt. This card harkened back kind of mixed feelings memories for me, because definitely when we made this card, we were not thinking about the fact that Splinter Twin was still in the format.
Yeah.
Rise of the Eldrazi. Slightly awkward, but this card is really good, not only because of the Splinter Twin combo, but a 1/4 blocker is relevant. It also can tap down whatever your opponent was using to fight over the Splinter Twin at the end of their turn. So it can kind of mess with a lot of the interactions in Modern. You know, a card like Cryptic Command that requires 3 blue mana, hard to leave up 4 blue all the time, so it allows you to generate strength.
Now, this thing has 4 toughness. There's another creature in the format that we just saw that also has 4 toughness. Very tough to kill, and man, this card brings a lot of value. It's Restoration Angel, Randy. Talk to us about the role of Restoration Angel in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the power here is that it does double duty. I mean, on the one hand, because when it comes into play, it can blink another creature. You know, if that creature is Kiki Jiki, you have a similar infinite combo. Blinking Kiki Jiki comes back untapped. It's got haste. Make another copy of a Restoration Angel. Oh, I'll blink the Kiki Jiki, so it's untapped, so I can make another Restoration Angel. And so it's the same sort of a 2-card combo to just make infinite hasty flyers, in this case, to come over for the kill. But even without the combo, 4 mana 3/4 flyer is pretty nice. And it's got flash, so you can play it on your opponent's turn, you know, in their end step. You can use that to pick a fight and make them sort of try to counter that. Then you get to be the first one to untap and do something else. You can also just use it for value, blinking Snapcaster Mage to get another flashback. You can blink Wall of Omens to draw another card. Just really, this is the reason to add white to your Splinter Twin deck, is Restoration Angel. Wall of Omens is also very nice, especially in a format that has a lot of Wild Nicodles and Zoo decks that are attacking you. But Restoration Angel is the real reason.
Yeah, the fact that it slots so nicely into the actual combo itself, at least a piece of the combo, it's just like this extra bonus that you get from a creature that brings you a ton of value anyway.
Well, and while being just so well positioned in Modern, I mean, this is a deck full of 4 toughness creatures in a format where arguably the best card is Lightning Bolt that deals 3 damage. So a really intelligently designed card. I mean, even if you're doing something just like chump blocking a creature from an aggressive deck and flickering it, yeah, that generates a lot of time for you.
All right, let's take a look at the last piece of the combo here, Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker. This sort of acts as a 5th through 8th
yeah, it's like it fits
Twin.
both halves, right? It combos with Restoration Angel. It also replaces Splinter Twin by comboing with Exarch, so it kind of does double duty.
That's right. All right, but players are ready. We're going to get Game 3 of Shaun McLaren versus Tim Rivera right now here from Valencia. Don't go anywhere. All right, back down in the feature match area here. Shaun McLaren leads off with the Steam Vents. Again, we're going to see not a blazing start from these two decks. There's not a whole lot to do in the early stages. So the key thing to keep your eye on at home is mana development. Basically just that both players keep hitting their land drops. When we get up to, 5, 6, 7, we're going to see some fireworks here. As we've mentioned, Tim Rivera basically able to attack this matchup from two different angles. He has the Restoration Angel angle and he has the Infinite Combo angle. And Shaun McLaren has to find a way to deal with both of them at the same time. It's a real handful from his side of the table, and that's going to be the challenge for him. But first order of business in these type of matchups, hit your land drops.
And casting Wall of Omens after Wall of Omens is going to do a decent job of that. And we see McLaren actually has a Threads of Disloyalty in his hand, which can steal one of those walls. Kind of adorable. We've got Logic Knot, so we know he sided that, and he kept in Electrolyze. But interesting play leaving in the threads. Most of Rivera's threats fly, so the wall not going to be doing a lot of blocking unless he was going to steal a Snapcaster Mage.
That's right. All right, so here's Electrolyze. You take 2 damage, I draw a card. Again, this is all in the interest of keeping those land drops flowing, which they're going to do here. He's got 3 lands in his hand now, so things looking good on that front.
Also allows him to get cards in the graveyard so he can cast Logic Knot.
Right.
Or for bigger numbers.
He's got the old school Logic Knot, the original.
It's one game to determine our semifinalist here. There's only best 2 out of 3 this time around.
Yeah, that's something that we need to keep in mind here. Best 2 out of 3. This is the 3rd semifinal match. We've got
first one to go to the decider.
Yeah, that's right. We've got one more match to bring you from the quarters after this, and then we'll be transitioning over to the news desk and bringing in those 3 that are currently on the desk in to bring you the semifinals and the finals until we determine a champion here in Valencia.
So we see Rivera doing exactly what he wants to be doing, which is just playing land after land after land. McLaren, also a solid hand, has a ton of removal spells. He's not going to be losing to a combo anytime soon. The question is if he's going to be able to start generating advantage through cards like Sphinx's Revelation, cards like Snapcaster Mage, cards like Cryptic Command. Now, from Rivera's side, I could see wanting to just go for Splinter Twin Dispel here. You've got to protect it. You can start getting ahead. You've got Kiki Cheeky to just kill the opponent. But
Tim doesn't. He just passes a turn, and on end step, Shaun McLaren is going to use his Tectonic Edge to take down the opposing Celestial Colonnade, and it looks like he's considering maybe, is he going to get really aggressive? No. He was looking at that Lightning Helix like maybe he wanted to fire that off, but he decided not to. Nice draw here for him, though, a Vendilion Click.
And that's yet another reason, to your point earlier, to keep in a few Lightning Helixes, a few bolts, is that you don't want to die to some incidental threat like a Vendilion Click here.
Second Splinter Twin for Rivera. Has to make the twin up the wall play a little more tempting.
Yeah, the wall plan looks better if he can get Shaun McLaren to use a Path to Exile on a wall. That's not the end of the world for him. He's already gotten a card back from the wall, so it's a 1-for-1 anyway. And there it is, Splinter Twin. Targeting my wall.
Right, leaving up Dispel mana.
Now, we do note, though, there's still that Threads of Disloyalty in his hand. I mean, is he just going to steal this thing and go to town?
No, I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, at first, I was like, well, why do you want a wall? But if your wall is a JMD tomb, a card that draws a card every turn, that's suddenly a big play for McLaren.
Yeah. I'll allow it.
That's crazy.
Interestingly, the question becomes, so Tim Rivera is almost tapped out here after that. Can Shaun McLaren grab that thing and not face death the other side? He absolutely can. So he's going to be able to just steal it. Here's Vendilion Click on end step, and he's going to get to see,
he even gets to clear a path.
Yeah. This is fantastic for Shaun McLaren. And
what just happened?
We could also potentially see a board state with 2 players with Wall of Omens and Splinter Twins on them going to town. All right, so at home you can get a look as well.
And there's nothing there that kills a Wall of Omens.
No, Tim trying to protect this hand with Dispel, but Dispel doesn't stop creature into Aura.
Right.
I mean, a great, it's sort of a high variance play to keep in threads in case a situation like this happens. But
he got there.
He got there. Yeah, exactly.
Shaun McLaren remaining remarkably calm given the avalanche of value about to about to hit him here.
And he's not going to be able to draw a card immediately because, you know, Tim is likely going to
Tap at his response.
Exactly.
That's fine.
But still, not a bad situation for Shaun.
McLaren's deck is not in a hurry to do much of anything other than, you know, stay alive. Maybe he's in a hurry to steal Wall of Omens Enchanted by Splinter Twin. About the only thing he's in a hurry to do. Takes the Dispel, yeah. It's such a good card.
So there's going to be one unknown card here from Tim Rivera, although it happens to be a land, as we know. Shaun doesn't know that. Remember, this is all on Tim Rivera's end step.
Right. Yeah, McLaren's clearing a path so that he can untap and use the threads that we know he has.
I'm kind of excited.
This is awesome. Not how I thought this game would
this is a very unorthodox situation that we're going to have in a control mirror here. Wall of Omens.
Crazy.
With Splinter Twin getting stolen by threads.
It's also just awesome.
Yes.
Like
It is awesome.
You have one Vendilion Click.
Unless
you
you're
have
Tim Rivera.
one Logic Knot. You have one Threads of Disloyalty. You're like, this is my plan to win this
He's
match.
got, what, 13 different cards in his sideboard?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe
12?
that's why you do this. You know, you don't commit to one entire strategy. You just like put a lot of ways for things to go right in your deck, and sometimes they do.
Here's a mana leak off the top for Shaun McLaren, but
That's insane.
it looks like the play is clear.
Really?
Did he pass the turn back?
Or is he doing this in combat to see if he comes up with a bolt?
That makes more sense. And it looks like he didn't come up with a bolt, so Tim Rivera is going to drop down to 15.
Very rarely do you see a deck just have complete aggressive and control advantage, but right now he's got 3-1 in the air unanswered, and he's about to have 2 cards a turn to Rivera's 1.
And there it is, Threads of Disloyalty on your Wall of Omens.
Yeah, Tim Rivera's looking at his hand like, what? I don't have a way to stop that. There's no way Rivera saw this coming either.
No.
We barely saw it coming, and we get to see their hands.
A nice like, well, I'm going to look at my hand and see if any of these cards do something that I don't know that they do.
Right. I mean, he could represent Path. But
Yeah, of course. I mean, Path would have been actually pretty good there. You know, I mean, you have to 2-for-1 yourself, but you already drew a card. You drew a card
not even in his
off
deck,
wall.
but yes.
Oh, so he confirmed sided it out.
Pretty sure.
Okay. Wow, yeah. So just no real good answers to that wall.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure the Paths came out.
And that means that Rivera's going to have to be the aggressor with Shaun having Vendilion Click on the table. I mean, and with Shaun having an 0-4 wall. I mean, this is not a good situation for Rivera to be in.
Yeah, once again, the deck that we thought had the advantage is not looking good here. Game 1, McLaren just managed to stay alive, fend off multiple combo kills, and then iced the game with Sphinx's Revelation.
Dispel off the top here for Tim Rivera.
Yeah, it doesn't affect the board state.
Now, one thing to note here, Shaun McLaren, you know, he does get a sweet play there with the Threads of Disloyalty, but he's got a long way to go to actually winning here. Tim Rivera always has the threat of, whoop, gotcha. So
Right.
That's true.
this is going to
The
be...
Vendilion Click means, though, that he's only got, 4 or 5 turns. McLaren has no reason to ever tap mana again.
And McLaren has Bolt, Helix, and 2 counter spells in his hand.
Okay.
Meaning
And
getting
he's just
through
gonna
this
get more.
wall is getting through this wall of counter magic is challenging.
All right,
right,
so
yeah,
there's
kill
the
the click.
Helix. Yeah, Helix on click. Let's get that out of here and put the life totals back to even at 17 apiece.
Yeah, now all McLaren has is Personal Howling Mine.
Which, pretty
It
good
should
thing
be
to
good
have.
enough, but I mean, Rivera buys turns to stitch something together. He's going to have to
Absolutely.
do it quickly. I guess he's got a Kiki-Jiki and a Twin. He needs... Well, he can Kiki-Jiki his own wall to keep up.
Oh, yeah, and he can twin his own wall to keep up if he wants to. I think he's trying to wait on having another mana to use Dispel to protect it.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, it looks like it. All right, Scalding Tarn off the top for Shaun McLaren. Draw another card here, so here we go. The train has started. Interesting, there's a Tectonic Edge now. He can actually double activate that and take his opponent completely off of white mana if he wants.
Oh, wow, and that's huge because that means, too, that Rivera needs yet another land coming into play untapped to protect his
Now,
Splinter Twin.
does Shaun know about Kiki-Jiki as well? Because he can also take his opponent 2 red mana sources off the table and strand that Kiki-Jiki, I mean, potentially for the duration of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think McLaren sitting on Lightning Bolt Helix isn't as afraid of Kiki-Jiki.
Right. Gotcha.
But, I mean, either of those plays are both very powerful.
Okay.
I mean, because, again, if you're just trading 1-for-1 on your opponent's lands, but you're the one drawing 2 cards a turn, Usually works out well for you.
That's the ideal. All right, so here's Splinter Twin, and it looks like he's going to go for it. So do we have this situation? Well, Shaun McLaren looks like he might.
Yeah, he's going to fight.
He is going to fight. So Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix. Does that resolve?
I like the way he played this. It's going to get dispelled, but he left himself Mana Leak.
Right. And now those Mana Leaks are live because Rivera only has
Had to
2
tap
mana
down to the
open.
dispel, yeah.
Yeah, he's also has that Logic Knot still floating around too. He's going to use the Mana Leak this time though. Logic Knot obviously can be way bigger when later on down the line. So get value out of the Mana Leak now.
So Remand left in Rivera's hand?
And Remand left in Rivera's hand, but Logic Knot left in McLaren's hand. So if he's willing to use all of his cards, which it seems like he is, he has a tome. And
yeah, both players
Rivera
should fight everything they have over this.
Yes.
McLaren is way far ahead if he manages to fend this off, and Rivera needs this to happen to just get back to parity.
Right.
I think there's really Rivera trying to figure out which piece he wants to remand. Like he could remand the Splinter Twin, he could remand. It seems like you remand the Splinter Twin.
Right, so that you can have
so that you can recast it later. You didn't give your opponent a spell back; you gave yourself a spell back.
That makes a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense, especially considering that this isn't going for the win here.
Right.
Like if he gets it next turn, he can get the cards back and start that train moving.
Right, and with Splinter Twin in your hand, I mean, that's really the reason that you care the most about Bolt Helix. Without the Twin generating a 2-for-1.
Yeah, I mean, the wall does die with this line, but...
Oh, absolutely. But
what's his other play? Give his opponent a counterspell back? Give his opponent...
A counterspell that he can just
recast it. Yeah, it doesn't even work. Remanding, there's nothing on McLaren's stack that he can successfully remand. It'll all just get recast.
Whereas if you remand your Twin, you don't have your personal draw a card every turn.
Right, but the wall's going to die.
Right. Your opponent used 2 burn spells on your wall that drew you a card.
Right.
So,
So remand the Twin seems like the right play.
Remand the dispel.
He's going to remand his own dispel here.
Which he doesn't have the mana to recast.
It does allow him to protect against the Sphinx's Revelation that McLaren draws, or set up his combo. Again, he has Kiki Jiki still in hand, so if he draws Exarch, it allows him to protect that. So an aggressive play from Rivera, not trying to defend his own Splinter Twin, but just getting the dispel back, hoping to draw something to go with
McLaren's
the Kiki
going to fight over it? McLaren cracked a fetch land.
He's got the Logic Knot, and I think he basically it's like using it to counter the Dispel, which he would anyway.
Yeah, he gets the Dispel and the card draw from the remand, so makes sense.
Yep.
And there it is. Logic Knot is going to counter. So Shaun McLaren, after the dust settles on this interaction, comes out ahead.
Tim Rivera now has lands. Nothing. And dust settling is, I think, the right description of that board state.
Yeah, he's also going to have 2 fewer lands probably after next turn, as Shaun McLaren has another Tectonic Edge in his hand. There's a Snapcaster Mage as well. So things, the value train riding hard here for Shaun McLaren, and here it is again, another draw step. He gets, Counterflux too. So he really can start putting some pressure on. The problem, of course, I wouldn't call it a problem, but Shaun McLaren still not actively hitting Tim Rivera's life total, but the longer this game goes from this point, the better it gets.
Yeah, and one of the things we didn't talk about with regard to that specific point that's actually huge in this matchup is that Shaun has Tectonic Edge and Tim does not. At least 4 copies. So the Celestial Colonnade advantage going squarely to McLaren.
All right, and here we go. Tectonic Edge this and take him off of 2 red sources, also a white source.
Mana?
Yes.
He doesn't know there's a Kiki Jiki. Well, he's actually stranding a Splinter Twin.
Yeah, he's stranding Splinter Twin. He does know that the Kiki Jiki's in his hand as well. But he saw it when he clicked them.
Playing that Sacred Foundry theoretically opens you up to another tech edge, whereas if you played Mountain and just planned on playing Sacred Foundry untapped, you'd at least know for sure that you could have a window to cast Kiki Jiki.
Okay.
Still pretty unlikely with your opponent's grip as full as it is.
Yeah, also he's got 2 more red sources in hand, so yeah.
Oh, he's got Sulphur Falls too.
He's and a Mountain, yeah. And he plays the Steam Vents this turn, so it looks like he's going to be able to recover. Still, number of lands matters here for sure.
Yeah, I don't count this as recovering.
My
opponent's drawing 2 cards and I'm drawing 1.
Yep.
And I'm just happy to get back to having all my colors in play.
And McLaren has the threat on the table that he can start using basically whenever he pleases.
There's
Oh, man.
another Snapcaster Mage for Shaun.
And, I mean, I think you want to save those Snapcasters for your counter magic. Wow,
Yep.
Path to Exile. A huge blowout here. And that Threads of Disloyalty has really just taken this game away. I mean, a super niche situation.
12-card sideboard full of one-ups.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Crazy.
How many cards? 3.
Rivera's actually got a combo kill in his hand. I mean, I don't think he thinks he has much chance of resolving it, but at some point he'll have to go for it because things aren't going to get better.
Right. And I mean, yeah, Restoration Angel at least allows him to apply pressure. It sort of makes McLaren do something. But, I mean, yeah, with just a combo of pieces and no real way to protect it. Pretty rough.
Shaun McLaren finds a couple of lands this time from his combo at this point.
Yeah, Rivera's going to run out an Angel.
Because to your point earlier, Randy, like you said, you know, you're not likely to resolve it now, but you're more likely to resolve it now than at any other point in the game.
Precisely.
So there's no need to sit around waiting for, you know, something to happen when you're drawing 1 card a turn, your opponent's drawing 2.
Is this going to be counterflux?
I think so. I love counterfluxing this.
He's got in the graveyard where it can be Snapcastered back later.
Shaun McLaren's at 18 life. He also has a Celestial Colonnade active, so if he doesn't want to, you know, the Restoration Angel's not doing anything else. Yeah, you just let it resolve.
Interesting.
And, like, you can
Second
path,
Kiki-Jiki.
which is okay, you know.
He does have path, yeah, and there's a second Kiki-Jiki off the top for Rivera, so a fairly miserable draw if there ever was one.
Rivera's still in. Well, let me cross my fingers. Have you drawn blanks for the last 10 draw phases?
That's right.
And with Angel resolving it, you kind of assume that's not the least likely thing ever. When you're not using counterflux on Angel, that means, okay, you're committing to path it, but that means that Dispel is live against your path, so then you have to counterflux the Dispel anyway. He gets the basic land.
There's only one card in Rivera's hand, though. So.
Sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, all really unlikely situations.
Right. Here's Path to Exile on Restoration Angel.
I do think pathing the Angel is better than using a counterflux there. Because the path doesn't do anything else.
Sure.
Counterflux is good, whatever else happens.
Oh, he didn't attack with Kiki-Jiki? I guess there is Colonnade if he throws
Has it resolved?
I think it did resolve. He doesn't want to run it into a Snapcaster Mage.
Or Snapcaster or a Colonnade or whatever, yeah. All right. Yeah, because he still has another Restoration Angels he can draw to try to just combo off, but here's Electrolyze to kill it.
And draw a card.
And draw a card, and it's a Cryptic command, so things looking very good for Shaun McLaren here, though.
I think the biggest thing he's got to think about now is how much more time he wants to spend on camera.
There's a Johnny Vengeant off the top as well. Represents a Lightning Helix and then maybe another one down the line. And here's 2 damage. So finally things start moving forward on the damage race here as Shaun McLaren gets in there for 2. He is in no hurry whatsoever, but I think he is going to play a Johnny Vengeant. And the question is, up or down? Up.
You lock a land down.
Yeah, so he's just going to start locking lands down. And now Tim Rivera has something to worry about because even if Shaun McLaren is not putting much pressure on him, if he gets to ultimate a Johnny Vengeant, Tim Rivera is not playing around it. He's just playing his lands here. So he knows if that happens, then the game's over anyway.
Yeah, at this point, too, with Counterflux Cryptic Command, it is going to be extremely challenging for Rivera to get back in the game. Wow, and a remand from McLaren. I mean, just a grip full of counter magic. Lots of damage coming at him potentially with Snapcaster Mage plus a Johnny. Also the threat of blowing up all of Rivera's lands.
All right, so here we go. Helix you. So the damage is starting to pile up here as a Johnny Vengeant uses the Lightning Helix ability. Crack a land, go down to 8.
And we can see we have Lightning Helix, Snapcaster Mage, Bolt for the full-on 9. It's a question of whether McLaren wants to commit to doing all of that at once.
Yeah, there's
or if there's any reason
so little incentive to do so, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
there's so little incentive to do anything really right now.
Probably depends how hungry he is.
Yeah, these are the things that we're thinking about right now.
The meta strategy.
Would he like to use the restroom? Like, there's all types of metagaming going on here. Tim Rivera draws a Spellskite's
nice
interesting
one,
here, actually, yeah. He can use it to redirect a couple of burn spells potentially.
Block Snapcaster.
Block Snapcaster Mage.
It'll then eat a lightning.
I guess it'll
though.
just eat one, yeah.
It just wants
He's
to get
going to
it over
cryptic
with,
command it, though. He's just, I think Shaun McLaren is ready to end this game.
Yeah.
And that's
All
it.
right.
Tim Rivera extends the hand. And 2 Canadians now into the semifinal.
Yeah.
Shaun McLaren advances. You see a nice smile on his face, and why shouldn't he? He is moving forward in the tournament. So it looks like we have one more round here. Welcome back to the booth, and we're going to throw it over to the news desk right now. We're going to get back here for our last quarterfinal match shortly after that. Don't go anywhere for now. Luis, Brian David Marshall, and of course, Rich Hagan await.
All right, thanks very much, boys and girls. BDM, let's play a little game. Rearrange these magic cards into a coherent sentence. Wall of Omens, Splinter Twin, Threads of Disloyalty.
I just watched that happen, and I don't know that I can actually do that. I could find them arranged that way, laying on the bottom of my dresser, perhaps, you know, just like some cards falling on top of each other. I thought we were watching a Splinter Twin deck.
Yeah, they were actually trying to find out who's the best Wall of Omens Splinter Twin deck, and it turned out it was McLaren.
It really was. Shaun McLaren wins at 2-1. Took the underdog game 1. That was a big part of this match. And then game 2, Rivera fights back, has the double Splinter Twin to force the game 3. But, have you sat there when you know there's nothing you can do and you're just watching it go further and further away from you?
He's sitting right here with us right now.
Yeah.
Since yesterday.
I mean, a lot of people like in the Twitch chat were asking, why doesn't Rivera concede he can't win? And while that was true, he probably couldn't win for a number of those turns. You're still in the top 8 of a Pro Tour. You still got to play out the game to its conclusion, and there's nothing wrong with just not conceding at that point.
And your opponent could conceivably screw up somehow.
Yeah, especially since here, he didn't know it was in McLaren's hand. If Rivera had drawn combo piece, dispel, there is a chance that he actually is playing against 4 lands in hand.
What if McLaren had just flashed his hand at him at any point?
Well, he's not going to do that for the same reason, but yes, that would have been pretty disheartening.
Yeah, he's playing blue, white, red, not blue, white, red flash, so you can't do that, I'm afraid.
Fair.
So let's take a look at the top 8 scoreboard. Here we are. We're into the top half of the bracket. You already see Ansi Alkio and Jacob Wilson advancing. The second Canadian is into the semifinals. Shaun McLaren is in, and that means we can turn our attention to Europe and to Germany and to Christian Sable against Patrick Dickman. The matchup is Affinity against Tarmo Twin. So why don't we take a look? There we are, BDM. Tell us a little bit about Christian Sable.
Well, I mean, I can only tell you very little bit. This is someone who, doesn't have a ton of Pro Tour experience. This is only his 4th Pro Tour. Mm-hmm. And again, we talked about this earlier, getting your first Pro Tour top 8 within that first handful of Pro Tours you travel to is pretty amazing. And he got there with from playing a Magic Online PTQ.
Worth noting, though, 19 lifetime pro points. So,
sure.
He's one of those people who top 64
going to the European Grand Prix, absolutely.
Right? Okay, so why don't we see how he made it in to this top 8. Here's his record going through. And then you see 3-0 in draft and then 2-1 on the second day of draft. Down the stretch, Michael Hetrick, he beat in 13, drew with Jacob Wilson, and then he was able to play that seeding match in round 16 against Shaun McLaren. So in he gets. He was safely in with a round to spare, and that makes him one of the highest seeds coming in. So on we go. Let's take a look then at his opponent, Patrick Dickman. Luis, tell us about this young man.
So this is actually only his 3rd Pro Tour, so even less than his opponent, but he actually won a Grand Prix earlier this year. He won GP Antwerp with basically the same deck, minus the Tarmogoyfs, but the blue-red Tempo Twin deck, which he's basically not put down since then.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a just phenomenal modern player. Came into this event with a 30-7 record, and has basically improved it at the highest level. Why don't we take a look at his path to the top 8 here? So here is his rundown. There you see. And we thought it was he was one of the people we identified, BDM, earlier in the weekend as let's see if he can get out of draft successfully. And as you can see, it's a good job he 3-0'd day 1 because only 1 and 2 on day 2. And it was very much his modern record that carried him. He was able to ID with Jacob Wilson in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, maybe Splinter Twin isn't always the most glamorous deck when you're talking about playing a game of Magic, but that's not the case for Patrick Dickman. He legitimately loves this deck. He loves playing this deck. He feels like this is everything he wants to do playing a game of Magic, and he is so excited every chance he gets to play, every more round he gets to play with this deck, he's happy because he's experiencing the deck, which I can't wait to see in action.
Okay, so why don't we take a look at the decks then, and let's begin with Christian Seibold. There is his deck list. It's a pretty single-minded deck, it's fair to say. Luis, why don't you walk us through what Affinity's doing here?
It's basically trying to assemble 2 different cards, either Cranial Plating or Arcbound Ravager, plus a bunch of 0 and 1 cost artifacts. The idea is to have its hand in play on turn 2, have no cards in hand by turn 2, which it often succeeds with.
This is no actual Affinity.
It's got Thoughtcast, so it's got
it does have the Thoughtcast.
The full amount of Thoughtcast.
So we can legally call this Affinity.
Right. There's no Frogmites or Mirror Enforcers, but it's got Thoughtcast to kind of keep the name alive.
I'm in the penalty box feeling shame. I meant to call it robots, aren't I? I'm so old. I'm sorry. One of the interesting things about this, when you watch Affinity players at work, robots players, there's an awful lot of touching the table going, there's 2 from that, that's a 3, that gives that +1, then I activate this. There's a lot of actual physical movement as they do the math. Is it a super mathy deck, Luis?
Oh yeah, I mean, between Arcbound Ravager being able to pick up all the artifacts, put it on itself, then move it to any other creature, it means any of your creatures is equal to the power and toughness of all the artifacts, total you have in play at any time. Cranial Plating can even move at instant speed if you have black. There's a ton of calculation going on.
Sure, and then there's always a little bit of like non-obvious damage hidden in your lands, which can become artifact creatures.
And especially with Inkmoth Nexus, which can poison your opponent out very, very easily. And sometimes you even want to just play a bunch of stuff, they try to deal with it, then you just kill them in 1 hit of poison.
It's ironic when we've seen plenty of combo decks that have this, here's Deceiver Exarch, here's a Splinter Twin, that seems like very straightforward, that this is one of the most single-minded decks in the top 8. But whenever you talk about decks like that, say a Dredge deck, for example, in theory, if you know it's coming, you can just choose to beat it. Have the rest of the top 8 just decided to beat robots?
Not so much that I would write, Christian off here. I think that the 3 Ancient Grudges that Dickman has access to is good, but it's not going to be enough to just guarantee victory by any stretch.
And if anyone here is going to be aware of this deck, it is actually Dickman, because the physical cards that Christian Seibold is playing is actually the B deck that Dickman built for himself. He's like, I really want to be able to play this twin, but he maybe had a moment of waver and was thinking maybe he would have to play Affinity, and then said no, and then Christian was able to play the Affinity deck. So he's aware of the deck, and he certainly thought it was a good choice for this weekend, so he was paying attention to this matchup.
What happens to that deck box and those cards if Seibold beats Dickman and then wins the Pro Tour? Does it just sit in a locked vault? Does Dickman bury it in the back garden there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think these guys are probably both really happy, thrilled for each other here, and either way, it's going to be a lot of German victory songs sung at the local hall tonight.
All right, so that's Christian Seibold. He is playing robots, Affinity, whatever you want to call it, old school, new school. Let's take a look at Patrick Dickman's main deck then for you. And as we've already alluded to, he's played a ton of Modern. He's super successful online with it, won a Grand Prix, and that was with this list, except let's just add a color. Let's just add one of the great Modern staples of all time.
Right. The list that Dickman played in Antwerp was kind of the foundation for the Splinter Twin deck we saw earlier, the blue-red Splinter Twin deck. This is his next iteration of it. He kept this one to himself, and he actually, in fact, hit it so well that he played multiple opponents this weekend who didn't know they were facing a twin deck. They just thought they lost to some sort of rug deck.
Yeah, I mean, when you go Tarmogoyf into Flame Slash into Scavenging Ooze, then into Vendilion Click, I could definitely see your opponents thinking like, all right, this is just like Rug Delver.
So does this deck suffer from being in the top 8 and having deck lists published and having everybody have access to it? Like, are there some free wins you can get with this deck in the Swiss rounds by people maybe not realizing they can't tap out on a certain turn because they're going to get combo killed the next turn?
Yeah, that's certainly the biggest difference, is that your opponents are always aware of Splinter Twin and into, Deceiver Exarch into Splinter Twin. The other is that anytime you're playing a blue deck and your opponent knows exactly how many Mana Leak, Spell Snare, Remand, Cryptic Command, and what the configuration is, that's a pretty big disadvantage too.
And is he conceited on some of the numbers to fit everything into this deck?
Yeah, he definitely had to do a little bit of trimming here and there just because you can't fit it all.
just play 65 cards. They're going to shudder when I say things like that. Don't play 65 cards. It's very, very naughty.
Frank Karsten has a spreadsheet to show you.
He actually did write an article about it.
All right, stop it. It's time for the 4th quarterfinal here at Pro Tour Born of the Gods.
Welcome back to the booth, guys. We are just about ready to head down to the future match area for Christian Seibold versus Patrick Diekmann. This is going to be kind of a different matchup than we've been seeing, but let's head down there right now. Let's watch the last quarterfinal match here from Pro Tour Born of the Gods.